Good evening, dear friends. Thank you for joining me on this Sunday evening. I'm coming to you from the American state of Maryland, close to our congregation, which is called Washington, D.C., Baltimore. This morning we witnessed the joyful official beginning, then, of the work of two of my colleagues in this congregation, Reverend Emma Herman and Reverend Matthias Giles. Also happens to be a married couple. I'm speaking to you from Emma's office, which is also the guest room. So things are a little bit improvised here. But I've enjoyed spending the last few days occasionally occupying myself with this material from the Apocalypse from time to time in the hope this evening to be able to present something of a little bit of enlightenment. This is also the period in our liturgical schedule when we often read in the act of consecration of man the 12th chapter of the Apocalypse, the stories and pictures that I have been working on the last couple of Sundays. Chapter 12, which begins with this magnificent picture, the woman clothed with the sun, the moon beneath her feet, the crown of 12 stars around her head, expecting a child, and then in the throes of birthing, births the child. And next to this beautiful natural picture is the picture of the great fiery red dragon who is waiting to devour the child as soon as it is born. And we hear that the child is swept away to the throne of God as soon as it's born, and the woman flees into the wilderness. The next picture is then that the dragon battles with Michael and his forces. And to make a long story short, the dragon and its forces lose the battle. They are thrown to the earth. There they pursue the woman who has fled into the wilderness, which we can now assume is the earth, is unable to catch her or to destroy her. And this beautiful picture where we hear the earth came to the woman's aid and opened its mouth and swallowed the great stream of water that the dragon had thrown out to try to capture or drown the woman. And the dragon goes after the progeny of this woman. And the last sentence I've always found quite chilling. It's not entirely certain what is intended. The last sentence, we've just heard the dragon was very angry, goes off to make war on the rest of her offspring, on those who keep the commandments of God and the testimony of Jesus. And then comes this very short sentence, and it stood on the sand of the sea. And there's quite a bit of discussion. Some manuscripts say, and I stood on the sand of the sea. This I would refer to John, the author of the Apocalypse, or if it's simply third person, he or it, or even she, the dragon stood on the sand of the sea. I leave it open. I tend toward the idea that we're still talking about the dragon, and then after this chasing of the woman and her progeny, it stands, or it stood, on the sand of the sea. The dragon being that entity, that being, which has now been thrown to the earth together with all of its minions, many, many beings who have violence and evil in their repertoire, and who stand now on the sand of the sea. Because the next picture, when here, I've probably said this before, but the chapters that are into which the books of the Bible are divided are completely artificial. They have nothing to do with any sort of narrative aid, or they simply chop it up into small pieces so that perhaps we can digest this more easily, or actually find portions of a particular book of the Bible we're looking for. So actually, after this sentence, and it, or I, stood on the sand of the sea. The very next sentence is chapter 13, which I'd like to read to you now in its entirety, directly out of the Revised Standard Version. And I saw a beast rising out of the sea, with 10 horns and 7 heads, with 10 diadems upon its horns, and a blasphemous name upon its heads. And the beast I saw was like a leopard. Its feet were like a bear's, and its mouth was like a lion's mouth. And to it the dragon gave its power, and its throne, and great authority. One of its heads seemed to have a mortal wound, but its mortal wound was healed, and the whole earth followed the beast with wonder. Human beings worshipped the dragon, for it had given its authority to the beast, and they worshipped the beast, saying, "Who is like the beast, and who can fight against it?" And the beast was given a mouth, uttering haughty and blasphemous words, and it was allowed to exercise authority for 42 months. It opened its mouth to utter blasphemies against God, blaspheming his name and his dwelling, that is, those who dwell in heaven. Also it was allowed to make war on the holy ones and to conquer them. It was given authority over every tribe and people and tongue and nation, and all who dwell on earth will worship it. Every one whose name has not been written before the foundation of the world in the book of life of the Lamb that was slain. If anyone has an ear to hear, let them hear. If anyone is to be taken captive, to captivity they go. If anyone slays with the sword they must be slain. Here is a call for endurance and faith of the saints. Then I saw another beast, which rose out of the earth. It had 2 horns like a lamb, and it spoke like a dragon. It exercises all authority of the first beast in its presence, and makes the earth and its inhabitants worship the first beast, whose mortal wound was healed. It works great signs, even making fire come down from heaven to earth, in the sight of human beings. And by the signs which it is allowed to work in the presence of the beast, it deceives all those who dwell on the earth, bidding them to make an image for the beast which was wounded by the sword and yet lived. And it was allowed to give breath to the image of the beast, so that the image of the beast should even speak, and to cause those who would not worship the image of the beast to be slain. Also it causes all, both small and great, both rich and poor, both free and slave, to be marked on the right hand or the forehead, so that no one can buy or sell unless they have the mark, that is the name of the beast, or the number of its name. Here is wisdom. Let the one who understands reckon the number of the beast, for it is a human number. Its number is 666. So much for chapter 13. Now, this is one of those many stories of the book of Revelation that has been interpreted and interpreted and interpreted to death, and perhaps we can revive some of that interpretation by trying to look at it in a spiritual way, but also in a way that stays as close to the text as possible, but also allows the cosmic viewpoints that we are able to pick up out of the anthroposophical way of looking at things to help illuminate some of these pictures. So if we look at these 2 beasts, just to contrast, imagine the dragon has now been thrown to the earth. Remember, the dragon also had 7 heads, 10 horns on its 7 heads, and 10 diadems, on its heads. And now a beast arises out of the sea, out of the ocean, out of the watery element, which has the same configuration of heads and horns and diadems, crowns. And now we hear something new about this beast, that it has a mortal wound which has healed. This is a contradiction in itself. I'll try to come back to that. Let's contrast immediately the other beast, which rises out of the earth. It's fairly easy to imagine a beast or anything rising up out of the water, but a beast that rises up out of the earth has got to contain a certain degree of energy, force, power, to move the earth in such a way that it can, in fact, emerge and be seen by the apocalyptist John, described as having 2 horns like a lamb, and I simply want to contrast these two, the watery element and these 7 horns. You can 7 heads, the 7 heads, which you see on many of the artworks. You can imagine that they're sort of writhing all over the place, looking in all different directions, not really focused with one focus on one object. And this disharmonious picture of the 10 horns on the 7 heads, nothing symmetrical about it. Obviously, some heads will have 2 horns, some will have 1, some head might have no horn. And then this picture of the mortal wound which has healed. This is quite a contradiction, and one wonders, a mortal wound which has healed, a wound that should have led to the death of the being, or at least perhaps the falling off of this head. This watery element, the beast of the watery element. And then the other beast which rises out of the earth. And we hear then later that this beast which so resembles the dragon has, like a leopard, feet like a bear, and mouth like a lion. Again, a disharmonious picture. All sorts of things mixed up together. And the dragon gives this beast out of the water power, throne, and authority. So it's as if the dragon comes to the earth with a mission almost. And when this beast rises out of the sea, which is almost a mirror image of the dragon instills the beast with its throne, a power, and authority. The mortal wound has healed. Human beings worship the dragon. Worship the beast. And the beast utters haughty, blasphemous things, exercises authority for a particular time, is allowed to make war on the holy ones, and given authority over every tribe, nation, tongue, and people. And all who dwell on the earth will worship it. That says, in a way, that every single one of us has been penetrated by this power and authority of the beast. Perhaps even we have a throne for the beast within us. This is not something to be afraid or ashamed of. You could almost say the dragon came with such force and energy, and this beast arises out of the sea with such a universal power that every human being is penetrated, permeated by this force. There is, in a way, nothing we can do about it if we're going to live on the earth. It's almost as if to say the powers of the watery element are going to live in all of us, and these powers have, since the coming of the dragon, been, in a way, you might say, infected by this beast, by this disharmonious, ugly beast, which has very little respect for anything, blasphemous words and shameful names, war on the saints, but permeates, in a way, all beings on the earth. And in contrast, then we have the beast which arises out of the earth, 2 horns like a lamb, and speaks like a dragon. Again, a bit of a contradiction. A lamb we think of as something very young, very pure. Perhaps even a lamb that has only drunk its mother's milk, has not yet taken solid food. At some point the lamb turns into a sheep, and then it's more earthy. But at this point, a lamb who speaks like a dragon. This beast exercises all of the authority of the first beast, makes the earth and its inhabitants worship the first beast. It works great signs. It brings fire from the heavens. You might think of the story of Elijah, who also brought fire from heaven for good, for the good. It's allowed to work signs in the presence of the first beast. It's allowed to deceive all of those on earth, and causing those on the earth to create an image of the first beast, which was wounded by the sword and lived. It was allowed to give breath to the image of the beast, so that the image of the beast can even speak. And all those who will not worship the beast should be killed. Now, I'm always very tempted when I read and listen to this story about the second beast, this 2-horned beast that arises out of the solid element of the earth, to say this is the one who wants to put everything in boxes. The first beast wants to create chaos, and with its 7 heads looking all different directions, kind of indicates to me when I myself, maybe even you, I don't know, when I myself am really not directing myself with my highest, my most authentic being, my I, as we would say, my highest self. We might say this is the soul working without the guidance of the inner spirit, the first beast, the 7 heads, the 10 horns. The second beast, we might bring it in connection with our technology of our times, which only works when things are 0 or 1, when they fit in neat boxes. You might even think of little Lego pieces that only work when all the little holes and boxes and things fit together. This beast serves the first beast. And I always have this interesting association with television. Fire from the heavens. Has some kind of electric power been harnessed? Electricity is a cold power. And this second beast comes out of the earth, the cold element. The first beast is all movement and confusion and even sort of fever-like, where the second one is much more contained, I feel like. It's much more operating out of this spirit, this higher self, but has very little feeling for anything else, very little warmth. It does the bidding of the first beast. It bids human beings to create an image of the beast. And you wonder, are we asking human beings simply to look at the images of the first beast and not really connect with that reality? Only to look at the outer side. What is the picture of the beast, the image? And then it's allowed to give breath to the image of the beast so that the beast should speak. Movies, television, internet. You're looking at one right now. Here is the image of a beast speaking to you. Technology makes these things possible. And you will not hear me condemning movies, television, or cell phones, or computers, or anything of that matter. But one wonders, do we have to let it go that far? That only when we worship the beast as human beings can we be allowed to participate in the daily activities of life. Only when we carry the mark of the beast on our right hand or on our forehead are we allowed to participate in society. And those of us who live in the modern world, and that's all of you out there, and me, and just about everyone else on earth, we run into more and more of these rules and regulations, where our governments, where our mayors, our governors, our city councils are saying, only if you do this, can you become part of society. And a real characteristic of this activity is that time is limited. You might remember chapter 12, the dragon was particularly annoyed because he noticed his time was short. And these two beasts working together, it seems as if they want to press us into going faster and faster and becoming more and more agitated and trying to get more and more done. As far as I know, it's a pretty well-known fact in our time that humanity has never had so many so many appliances and things to help us do our daily work. Think of washing machines, dishwashers, running water, sewing machines, cars, mass transit. We have all these things in order to do simple daily tasks more quickly, and yet never has any time in human history been so breathless and so out of time and so lacking time. I have piles of things I want to do, not here in this room, but back home. And I always say, when am I ever going to get to this? So the beast wants to take charge of us. And what we really can do, perhaps even in very small quantities, perhaps something very daily, like controlling our thoughts, watching over our feelings and reactions to things, breathing. How often do we really breathe fully out? Breathing in is not such a problem for contemporary human beings, but allowing our breath to completely exit the body. We always seem to have some junk left over in our lungs. Doctors have confirmed this. Take time. Make space. Be present. The beast is there, whatever we do. He's not going anywhere. I may have to talk about this some more next time, and I'm sure everyone was dying to hear what 666 means. It means a lot, and it means nothing. So I'll save that for next time. I'll be back home again next Sunday evening. Let's make it 7 p.m. Central Time. I'm going to contemplate a little bit more of this chapter 13. There's a lot of material on this, and a lot of it is really very good. I see there's one question. Maybe I can... Does the earthly beast have a particular relationship to the formation out of matter that is the evil of people, the making of a materialistic explanation, theories of science? And Catherine, may I keep that question for next week? Because I think that's very important, the relationship of human beings to the material world. So we're not done with chapter 13. If you have a chance, read through it. If you have any literature on this subject, please feel free. The Beast, 666, and so on and so forth. Thank you for listening. I wish you all a pleasant Sunday evening, afternoon, whatever time zone you might be in, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Have a good evening.